he said, I would like to invite you for dinner afterwards. And then I said, well, food is really not that easy around me. And he said, no problem, just tell me. And I said, well, no meat, no dairy, no fish, no eggs. And he said, no problem. And then he said, I'm going to make hummus. That's what he wrote. And I said, no oil. I'm so sorry. And he said, no problem. So that was a good start.
Welcome back to another episode, and in a little bit we'll be learning about Karoline Mueller from the Houston area, who is a Food for Life instructor, a Plant Pure pod leader, and she'll tell us her story of overcoming a lifetime struggle with food, experiencing tremendous weight loss, and now helping others create change in their own lives. She has a Ph.D. in chemistry and was recently featured doing a food demo on the Food as Medicine Summit. Now this podcast is a little different because she will give us a food demo during our conversation. So if you go past 30 minutes on the podcast, that's around the time that she'll start talking to us about a traditional German dish that she grew up with that is now plant-based. A couple of announcements before we speak to Karoline. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast for more great interviews. You can go to our website, plantbaseddfw.com/podcast, to learn about how you can listen on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, SoundCloud, Spotify, and now iHeartRadio. And I also put our podcast on our YouTube channel. So the link to the YouTube channel is bit.ly/plant-based DFW. And I'm about to start a series of healthy plant-based cooking videos for you that are all doctor approved. Okay, so make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for that as well. And I wanted to let you know about PCRM, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, now offers telemedicine in the state of Texas. So you might want to go to their website to find out about that. And also they're offering an 8-week nutrition class that I've previously mentioned. So you can still sign up, pcrm.org/nutrition class. I send out a weekly newsletter that includes our podcast guests. I include recipes and other information to really get you started on a healthy plant-based lifestyle. Finally, I think you're going to want to write this down, or at least make sure that you check the show notes. There is a 21-day online event that Dr. Riz is part of, and this is a diabetes summit. It's called the Diabetes Turnaround Masterclass. It includes 20 top influencers. You learn the truth about reversing type 2 diabetes and discover simple, effective ways to lose weight, free yourself of chronic disease, and live a longer, healthier, more abundant life. The link will be in the show notes. Make sure to subscribe for that. It's a free summit. It begins September 28th, and I will include the information as I get more details on that. Okay, let's hear from Karoline. So welcome, Karoline. How are you?
Thank you, Maya. I'm so happy to be with you and to join you on your podcast.
Well, thank you. I've been wanting us to kind of sit down and have this kind of conversation, and we both have been pretty busy. Well, let's start because I do want to know how the pandemic has affected all your activities. And I'm signed up to your newsletter that I received today, so I'd like to touch on that as well. Can we start with your story? I know that you have this amazing story about weight loss, and tell us about that if you'd like.
So I come from a family of 4 children. I'm the youngest. And really early on, like a few months after my birth, I actually had problems with vomiting, and I was a very sickly, thin child. And then with 3 years of age, I had a tonsillectomy. And after that, my weight changed dramatically and drastically. And I was always a plump child. I think these days people wouldn't pay that much attention to it, but back then it was, I really stood out. And also food was really important to me. I remember I might have been 4 years old, like climbing up to the kitchen counter to reach the oat flakes and the sugar, and I would make myself an extra bowl of rolled oats, sugar and milk. With 4 or 5 years old, I was always hungry. I was like, food was a little regulated in my family, so I was always like looking for extra food, like all my life. It never stopped.
any idea what was driving you to eat so much?
I wonder if something had really changed in or maybe I never had a particularly good gut microbiome, and then over the surgery you have to be without food for some time, you get more antibiotics. We already, because I was sickly, lots of infection, and it continued, that I got lots of antibiotics, that there was something going on with my gut microbiome, and it shifted it this way.
And then did that continue on through most of your life?
Yeah, I did. Um, I so when I was 18, I did a fasting health spa. It was actually mostly juice fasting. I got a glass of carrot juice and a big cup of vegetable broth every day.
Mhm.
And I lost weight, and I was like the weight I really would like to be for the first time in after my teenage, or like as long as I can remember.
Mhm.
And it didn't last very long. It was a very traumatic time in my family. My mother was diagnosed with cancer, and I sort of totally spiraled out. I would gain the weight back and twice as much, and then I would do some fasting again and I would lose, and it just went up and down and up and down. The last time I had one of those weight losses was when I came to the US when I was 20 years old. It was very exciting here. I ate fairly healthy with lots of salads, and I lost the weight. But then when I came back for grad school, like depression hit again, and I gained all the weight back. At one point, it ballooned up to 240 pounds. And I pretty much settled between 200 and 220 pounds for
Wow.
many years of my adult life.
Oh my goodness. And how did you begin to discover that you can use food as medicine?
So I had inklings before, like when I was 13, my family actually did a lot of changes in food. We ate a lot more raw food. We ate raw vegetables. We would grind our own flour for breakfast. We would have like freshly coarse shredded grains in the morning. We did all that. But, then when my mom died, we also ate more meat again. And even before, we still ate cured meat. We ate processed meat because it's just so German. And my mom died of colon cancer. When I came here, a few years later, I found permaculture. And the permaculturists that I was hanging out with, they were vegetarian. So very soon I became a vegetarian. But being me, I, of course, after a brief period of increased health, I ate more cheese and more ice cream, and it just continued in the same. And even when I found veganism and became a vegan a few years later, I did the same thing again. That addiction-like behavior is so strong. But then in 2011, my supervisor had a triple bypass surgery, and I was like, I need to do something for myself. I want to show it to him. I'm always motivated by helping more than helping myself. And that's when I followed the advice that friends had given me a long time ago to check out Dr. John McDougall. That's when my journey really started. That was in
Ah,
2011.
2011. I want to say that I started learning about Dr. John McDougall in 2013. So our story in terms of when we got into that information is very close. So I wanted to know, going back a little bit about when you first went vegan, you said that those eating habits continued. So are you saying you stayed vegan, but now you were doing consuming the vegan cheeses and all kind of like the fatty vegan foods? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I found not so much the cheeses. The cheeses I never cared for, but like the sausages I found, and the ice cream substitutes. Do you hear a theme here? Ice cream is like really high ranking in my life,
Yeah.
and the soy yogurt and stuff like that. And I have an amazing ability. Oh, on nuts and dried fruit. I mean, wonderfully healthy foods, but just very, very calorie dense. And I don't have that regulation to notice when I'm full.
hearing how you ate in the past and where you are today is incredible.
During that first year when I lost the weight and I lost about 70 pounds, I noticed that if I had one meal a week eating out with friends that contained oil, I wouldn't lose any weight. And in other weeks, I would often lose 2 pounds a week. So that was quite a motivator for me to avoid the oil. And like that one meal back then, I was so committed, it did not trigger me into, searching for more calorie dense food at that time. But I know there is a danger if I can easily get used to more calorie dense food. But just not having, just having the impact of that one meal with some oil on it, it was just stunning to me.
Were you okay in transitioning to eating those starchy foods initially? Because they are satisfying.
Yeah, I had always eaten those. And so what I focused on was no more of the processed vegan sausages, no more vegan butter. That was actually another one. And I got used to eating my vegetables without the butter. And then I would focus on those filling starchy vegetables and whole grains, whole intact grains. At that time, I did not do too much of the flour stuff. I might have occasionally pasta, but I stopped eating bread because bread is very calorie dense too.
So now you're discovering that you're feeling better with foods and eliminating oils. And then when did you get married, and did you bring your husband on board, or was he already plant-based?
Actually, in May of 2011, before I started my journey, I decided I needed to take some time for myself. I needed to figure some stuff out. I had finally, a few years earlier, graduated with a Ph.D. in chemistry. I was engaged in a choir and in this music ensemble and a few other things. And I wanted to figure out what I really wanted. And then a few months later, this whole thing happened with my supervisor, and I started this journey towards my health. And but I had kept some sheet music. I had kept one voice out of a set. Not good musician etiquette to do that.
I bet.
The following year, early in 2012, I showed up to one of their rehearsals with my viola voice, and the owner of the sheet music was very gracious and accepted it back and invited me out. He had started the divorce in the meantime, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. And I told him, I'm leaving for Germany and I need to meet with my cat sitter this week. I don't have time. And he thought I was blowing him off. So there I was in Germany over Easter, and he sent me Easter greetings. And at that point, I decided I will invite him to a choir concert. Now, I wasn't singing in choir anymore. I was going to concerts. And so that was our first date. He said, I would like to invite you for dinner afterwards. And then I said, well, food is really not that easy around me. And he said, no problem. Just tell me. And I said, well, no meat, no dairy, no fish, no eggs. And he said, no problem. And then he said, I'm going to make hummus. That's what he wrote. And I said, no oil. I'm so sorry. And he said, no problem. So that was a good start, and we dated for a little bit, and then we were together. Poof, it happened really quick. At first, he was just going to humor me. He wanted to be together with me, and he knew the only way for this to happen was to cook my way. But then after we were together, like within 1 week, he noticed a difference in his body. And within 6 months, he was vegan. A little more than a year, we were married.
Wow, it was meant to be. My goodness. I mean, for him to transition that fast, he must have really been in love.
Actually, he had a bad start with my cooking. He insisted on helping me install a hot water heater in my apartment. That was the beginning of the very serious dating. And it was August, and my apartment had 2 window units, and the kitchen was unair conditioned. And I told him, I don't need a hot water heater in August in Houston. I might need it by November. I had experience with that. I had been without a hot water heater before. But he insisted, and so there we were working side by side. I think that did something, the chemistry between us too. But I served him a ginger soup, ginger butternut squash soup, and I loved that soup. But that time I had put too much ginger in, and the ginger was exceptionally strong. So he ate the ginger soup, and he totally trusted his own cooking at that point. But in the meantime, we really changed.
So I knew of your husband's cooking because you share that, and you even in your food demos sometimes recommend the canned whole tomatoes that he says are like the best. And I want you to know I use them now. I use that brand as well. Carolina, at any point did you do any lab work to kind of compare your numbers before you went plant-based and then now?
I wish I had, but I was so doctor phobic at that time. It's, when you're so overweight and stuff going on, I really didn't want to see anyone. And then I suddenly started on that, and things happened so quickly that I didn't even think about it. But what I really noticed is I had foot pain, like waking up in the morning. I was so stiff. I was stiff in the hips, but then just the feet. I might have had plantar fasciitis. I never had it diagnosed even. I just, one thing that I did all these years before, there was one pair of shoe I could wear without too much pain, and it was the Masai Barefoot Technology shoes, just the sandals. That's all I wore throughout the year, going hiking, visiting in Germany. I needed a boot at one point, and so my mom would bring her boots that fit, and they would pick me up because there was snow on the ground. I would put the boots on, and they dropped me off at the airport, and I would switch shoes.
Wow. And now I'm sure that you can wear any shoe you want, right?
I'm still a little finicky with my feet, but I don't have that foot pain anymore, and I'm really happy. The other thing was like I actually moved a lot at that time. I would go to NIA, which is a movement class, choreographed to music. I became a NIA teacher. I went to classes like 5-6 times a week. I really moved a lot. Like my 220-pound body would jump up and down. Half an hour after moving, my joints, especially my hip joints, they would get so stiff. It felt like they were seizing up.
You're now in a position where you're actually helping people. You're involved in a Plant Pure Pod, and you're also a Food for Life instructor. So how did you even get to that point?
I think it's quite a common phenomenon that people who have like such a shift in awareness that they want the whole world to know about it. And my friends were quite getting fed up with me. So I was like, okay, I need to find an audience that is free to walk away from me. And so I was looking for some time what to do. And eventually I found the program by the Physicians Committee, that's the Food for Life program, where you're trained to be a cooking instructor. And there's a support structure there. There's a curriculum, and there's all kinds of support to actually put these classes on. And if there are questions, I can email like a nutritionist or a doctor, and it's just that back support for me. I'm a chemist, I know a lot, but I'm not a medical professional, and that really makes a difference.
Yeah, and it surprises me. I didn't know you had a PhD. So you could go by Dr. Mueller if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, I could. And for me, it's always in this setting particular, if I say I'm Dr. Karoline Mueller, people think I'm a medical doctor, and I'm not. So
How often do you use PhD after your name? Because I don't remember seeing that before. You don't really, right?
I have dear friends tell me that I really should.
You
So I
should.
get used to it.
You should. You've worked really hard for that degree, and it's still important. So I saw you, I think I saw you twice because I mentioned the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Were you there, or was I confusing it with the PCRM's conference?
It
Okay.
actually was the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine last year in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, last year when we saw each other there and we marched in white coats to the Capitol to basically kind of in a non-aggressive way say, ditch the dairy, do away with meat. And it was my first time going. It felt so wonderful to be part of such a large movement, a wonderful organization like PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And then you were there. So that was like a big plus. But it's just been wonderful to be part of this. And then I know even at that conference, the Food for Life instructors kind of have their own little get together as well, right?
That time we had a special day for us. It was really wonderful. We had training in how to deal with getting the word out. That was the big part last year with Stephanie Red Cross from Vegan Mainstream.
And you mentioned briefly what a Food for Life instructor is, but for those people that may not know, I kind of want to just mention how I even met you is through knowing Dr. Chawla, doctors Munish and Bandana Chawla. I attended some of their events, and you happened to be one of the instructors that was doing a food demo. And I found you to be entertaining, such a nice spirit and energy that you have. And then, of course, your food is delicious. My sister, at the time I dragged her to one of the events, she loved you. She was like, where can I learn more from her? And so let's talk about the Food as Medicine Summit. So you are actually you're involved in it as well. What should we expect to see you doing at the summit?
The theme that I picked was sauces and dressings, because I think they really help prepare something and then you can combine it with fast vegetables, and so there's always something to eat. And so I introduced a few salad dressings, and I really wanted to make it super simple. So for us, for example, if there's nothing else ready, there's always vinegar. And it's very easy to switch up the flavors a bit by having a couple of different vinegars at home.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if you have lemon or lime juice at home, it makes a wonderful salad dressing just by itself. And then you can spruce it up a little bit by mixing in tahini or mustard, or mixing in a fruit, like just balsamic vinegar and strawberries makes a wonderful salad dressing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one part. And then I introduce a very simple marinara sauce. And one of the challenges to myself, because I had never done it before, was to make a cheese sauce. And since then we love it. I have made it again, and I think it will be a staple. You can put a little bit of cheese sauce over sweet potatoes and processed sprouts and all kinds of vegetables, and it's an instant boost.
Yeah. Well, Carolina, those categories that you just mentioned, like the sauces, the dressings, the marinades, are the key to making food taste delicious.
In my last cooking class, we had the discussion, and I asked Dr. Bandana Chawla to speak up to it too. With salt, for some people, it's really, really important. For me, for blood pressure, I actually probably do better with a little bit of salt because my blood pressure tends to go low. But then salt also makes food more attractive. So to someone like me who tends to overeat easily, it's actually better if I tone down the salt. And I think there are some people who probably have no problems with it one way. So my husband, the arrangement at home is that we cook without salt, and he gets to sprinkle on salt on the surface.
Yes.
And then we use a little bit of miso or mustard, and prepared mustard, they tend to contain a little bit of salt, or if we buy some salsa. So it's minimal salt, really. I mean, the quantities is so much lower than if you buy any processed food.
Right, I agree. So because you don't have additives and preservatives in your dressings. And yeah, same thing with salt. I'm a believer. I avoid salt, but if I'm cooking for someone else, I may add a little bit at the very end so that the flavors can be enhanced for them. But my goal is also to introduce fresher, easy to make meals at home. So I don't want to discourage them by making the food bland either. So I was interested in knowing, first of all, what were you doing in the pod, and how has that changed for you now that we have a pandemic going on and we can't gather as much?
The first cooking class I ever did, one of the participants said, it would be really lovely if there was ongoing support structure. But that was in 2015, and Plant Pure Nation didn't exist yet. And then as soon as I found Plant Pure Nation, I watched it was already on YouTube, I think, when I found it. I watched it and I was like, yes, that's how we create community. That's how we bring all kinds of people together, the people who do raw vegan, the people who do starchy vegetables, there are all these different flavors. We can all be together in this container of Plant Pure pods and support each other. And we can involve doctors and nutritionists and people like me who just offer cooking classes. And I just love the idea. And so I went onto the webpage and I was writing to the pod and there was silence. And then somebody asked me, would you like to be the pod leader? And I was like, no, thank you. So luckily, Leah Stoller stepped in and rejuvenated the pod. And then we met in restaurants or like at juice bars. We met at the salad place. And people said, it would be so nice if you could have a potluck. So I was working on getting us a potluck place. And I finally convinced my church where I was teaching a cooking class to give us some space just one time for a potluck. And people loved it. And then a little later, Leah Stoller said, okay, I did it for a year. It's your turn now. And so since I think summer of 2018, I want to say, I've been pod leader. And it's really the back-to-back of cooking instructor and having people in classes and then say, if you want to have continued support, please come to the pod. And from the general public, whoever finds us, and patients and participants in what the Lifestyle Dogs Clinic offers with Dr. Banin and Manish Chawla. We all come together. And before the pandemic, we had several times where we had 50 people attend our potlucks.
I think that's what drew me so much to the Houston area is the collaboration among the pod leaders and so many pods in that area, which is very different than Dallas. Although we just had 2 or 3 that just got started right before the pandemic. So some of them maybe had one meeting. And so that was very unfortunate. But how you guys work and collaborate, especially with the doctors in the area, was wonderful. And for people who may not have heard of Plant Pure Pods, they're basically it's a grassroots organization. It got started by Nelson Campbell, who is the son of T. Colin Campbell, who co-wrote the China study. And basically, he started this movement with Plant Pure Nation of just getting people to kind of organize and offer support in their community. And so we got started we were doing it in 2018 before we officially joined, because I wasn't sure if, like you, I got on the website and I was like, but I checked every pod that has signed up early in 2016 and no one was active. I reached out to the leaders. I asked, are you guys doing anything? I'd like to get involved. And no one did anything. So I started it. I started Plant-Based DFW. And I was fortunate because my husband's a doctor. He could talk about the medical aspect. And then we started collaborating with people that were doing things on a smaller scale in their own home. So you're still sending out your monthly newsletter. How are you able to maintain a sense of community now online?
The beginning of this month, we had a very nice meeting. I think we had maybe 20 people show up for our online meeting, which is a nice group. And we had some people who are new to it. They're just exploring. They wanted some easy recipes. I really love when I hear back from the community. I've been encouraging people to email me. That's a little sparse, but coming to those meetings is great. And then the other part that I do, it's not directly the Plant Pure part, but I'm working on the climate action team of my church. And so there is actually a little bit of overlap in people now. And there I have meeting with the other organizer, and that feels really like a community. I wish someone else in my Plant Pure community would help with playing off ideas, what we can do. I really do well when I get to talk. I process a lot while I'm talking, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And so it stimulates me, it gets me energy, and then I'm willing to do stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, this is kind of like what we're using the podcast for now is sort of to offer tools to our community because we're not doing lectures, whereas before we could invite guests to speak at our events. Now it's like, well, if we can feature people like yourself and and let people know that you're available in Houston, and even if you're doing things virtually, you're still a resource.
Actually, in March, we had a documentary screening, Code Blue, and we had a fabulous meeting. It was co-hosted with the church, and we brought in health professionals. We had 6 or 7 groups with 2 health professionals each, and then people could interact with the health professionals for 15 minutes, and then they would rotate around, and so they had a chance to talk to 4 different groups. People really love that. And I hope that I can do something like that online again. Now that Code Blue is online and Dr. Starchy is actually willing to do interviews and Q&As, I really hope we can get a interested group together that helps us to spread the word, and we can do something with her. I find her story and the way she interacts and gives, I find it so moving and touching, and she also does a lot with medical students. I hope we can get connections with the medical students here, because that's really our next milestone to get contact there. And with the University of Houston now having a medical school, and they focus on primary care, on really helping on those chronic health issues, maybe something will develop there.
Do you have any other summit coming up or anything like similar to that that's coming up?
I don't have another summit come up, but I will be offering more cooking classes again starting in October. The plan for me is to offer a class free of charge where I pick up a little bit on my sauces and fast meals subject again, because I think that helps people get started. And then PCRM, the Physicians Committee, they put together a wonderful program that looks at all the different comorbidities for COVID-19. And even if you're not worried about COVID-19, even if it like miraculously went away, then those comorbidities, there are diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease and weight and general immune system function. Even if the food wouldn't do anything to help us with COVID-19, or if it like disappeared overnight, then these issues, they are still with us, and they still kill so many people and make so many people suffer.
I hear you. Yes. And so if people want to watch you or follow you, what's the best way that they can contact you?
I'm just starting up my own YouTube channel as soon as the Food is Medicine Summit is over.
Awesome.
I'll actually upload some of the videos, and I hope to keep creating. And then, because my name is a little difficult to pronounce for non-German, French, or Spanish speaker, I started Karolina's Plant Kitchen. And you can connect with me via the landing page.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. And I know because of your, I want to say production skills or technical skills that you put together good content. So I'm going to make sure that I subscribe as well. And were you going to give us sort of a little a quick food demo? Do you have time for that?
Yeah, we can do that. It's something very simple. So I also do a fair amount of gardening. So I have some cucumbers from the garden. And in cucumbers in general, especially the bored ones, actually, you buy them and like 2 or 3 days later, they start to go limp or even grow moldy. So one thing my husband and I came up with is to slice them and to slice some onions and to layer them in a water vinegar mixture. And that preserves the cucumbers, if you push it, maybe even up to 2 weeks, but it's probably better like if you eat them within 10 days or so.
Right.
But it stays crispy, and that's the nice part, and they won't spoil.
All right. So Carolina is in her kitchen.
Great. So it's very simple. We have a nice dish where everything goes in, and I The cucumber is a little thick in the center, so I cut it in half so the pieces are more easily manageable. I can also have a look on the inside. I left this just a touch long, but the seeds are still soft. So just cut it up. Always the trick to find the cucumbers in the cucumber vine jungle. Especially now that there weren't that many cucumbers ripening. With the heat coming, they don't set anymore. There was a time before where I would give away cucumbers right, left, and center.
So this has been a pretty hot summer, at least from my perspective. Has that affected your garden at all, or is it normal to you?
I think it was still pretty normal. And in Houston summer, it gets so hot that tomatoes won't set, cucumbers won't set. I think even peppers suffer a little bit. We still had eggplants, and we had a few cooler days. So as soon as the rain came and it got cooler, we got some beans again. We got the cucumbers again, and but yeah, eggplants were still coming. In fact, I have like 3 bags of eggplants in the fridge. So we're exploring all our eggplant dishes. From baba ganoush to, someone reminded me of, I think, ikri, the Russian dish where you roast the eggplant just like for baba ganoush, but then instead of mixing it with tahini and lemon juice, you mix it with a tomato paste and sauteed onions. So maybe the onions should be quarters too.
So now that we're growing some of our own green leafy vegetables and tomatoes and peppers, we started playing around with the idea of trying to see if we can also grow onion and garlic using grow bags, but in our small patio because we live in a small space. And we use, onion all the time.
Yeah, we use, so citrus, I have never before in my life used that many lemon and lime juice like now. It's like every second dish has that in it. And then onions, garlic, all the time.
So you're layering your dish with the cucumber.
Yeah, so I'm just layering them in. The neater you are, the more you get in without wasting too much space. I'm a little impatient right now, of course.
So I'm going to include this portion in the actual audio podcast so that if people want to listen in, they can kind of have an idea of what you were preparing. But you just sliced 1 cucumber and half of red onion, and you're layering one on top of the other.
There we go. Then keep going.
My mouth is watering already.
Yeah, this will be good, like after one day. And the nice thing is raw onion can be really too much for many people. But once they were in vinegar for some time, they are not as biting for the stomach and much more digestible. And it's also the reason why I use red onions, because they are a little milder, or we might use the sweet onion.
Yes,
It
I
really
was.
made a change how much raw onion I can eat.
Right. I was recently listening to Mastering Diabetes, and they were talking about how they'd like for people to kind of transition slowly so their bodies can get adjusted to some of the foods that they're not used to consuming. I guess maybe onion is one of them if you're not used to eating a lot of onion or garlic, along with like legumes.
Yeah.
Are you mainly now raw? More raw than cooked foods?
No, we are half and half.
Okay. Yeah, that's my goal, is to incorporate. I really focus on having raw foods just because we get into the habit of cooking everything, and you know how that is.
Yeah, we often have large salads. In a little bit, I can show you our salad container. I'm very lucky that my husband mostly puts those together. He's really very good at making sure that vegetables will not spoil. That really upsets him, and I totally agree. if you look at the data, it's like 30 or maybe 40% of food is wasted in food spoilage. And considering the environmental cost of growing food, this is just, we really need to change this. So he makes sure that all the vegetables we buy actually go into us as food and not into the compost pail.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you um, also try to freeze some of your vegetables if you just can't consume them fast enough?
Yeah, we do. We right now, like with our garden vegetables, we have been freezing beans, and I think we might be experimenting freezing the roasted eggplants. We have been, like, sometimes when you get a good deal on fruit, we have been freezing fruit. But then for like the cooked food, we cook in batches, and then we fill it, mostly because there's limited freezer space. We fill it into jars hot and seal it hot, and then it will stay okay for several weeks. And that way we have variety to eat.
Mm-hmm. I found myself having to freeze some of our peppers because we couldn't eat them fast enough either. So, all the little things that we have to learn along the way.
Do you grow your peppers outdoors, or are they indoors?
Well, we grow right now everything indoors using a hydroponics water system. So it's basically just water, nutrients that we put in the water, and then we use LEDs in addition to that, LED lights to help them grow. So we have such a small space where we live, and our patio receives too much heat, I think. And then also when there's wind, I mean, nothing can stay in my patio. Everything gets blown around, and a lot of dust comes through the area too because of how we're kind of on a corner. And so we receive wind from like two ends, depending. Um, and we have found that growing indoors, and it's not for everyone, but we have found that our foods, we don't have any issues with bugs eating our foods, and they grow faster, and we can easily maintain them because I check on them every single day. And I do pollinate some of the flowers. So because I don't, what happened?
Are you a busy bee?
I am the BCB. Oh my goodness. Because they're not in a natural environment where the bees and the insects, would help pollinate the flowers, or even just a breeze would help. So we're having to do that. But it's been an amazing experience for us to grow our own. Like, we grow a lot of green leafy vegetables. That's been like the best to make our own salads that way. But I'd like to incorporate other things in grow bags where we would use soil, but they're contained in a smaller bag for limited space. So like I said, I'd like to grow onions as well.
Okay, so now I will add some yellow mustard seeds. And you see how well measured out this is.
Yummy.
And today I will add some dill weed. Definitely not the time for dill here, it's too hot. It's a very traditional combination, cucumbers, especially pickled cucumbers and dill. My mother, she prepared all the pickled cucumbers that we ever ate as a family. So we had the old-fashioned wake jars. They would be the square with actually they were not even with a tie-down lid. It was like the rubber gasket, and then we had the clamp to go over the top.
Yes.
And we have like 20 of these jars, and we really like the neutral flavor of rice vinegar. Now I realized that I ran out of rice vinegar. We have a pantry where we keep everything, but what I do is I mix 1 part rice vinegar and 2 parts of water. That way it's not too vinegary, and then you cover everything with vinegar. You can shake it up a bit so everything gets covered, leave it in the fridge for the next day, and then it's good to eat, and will be good for 10 days.
Wow, I think I'm going to try that. Oh my gosh, my mouth is watering. Awesome. Thank you so much. So nice to see you. By the way, I miss you in person. So
I miss you too. I miss
Aw.
hugs. I'm a hugger.
I know, Miss, so am I. Well, I want to say congratulations on being part of the summit. I think it's awesome that you'll be featured on there as well. And I hope that people take the time to watch your videos when you actually create your YouTube channel. And then I'll add some information about your pod as well, because who knows who might be in Houston as well. And I want to thank you so much for your time and for doing this food demo for us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, till next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Been listening to the Plant-Based DFW podcast show. If you like our content, please like, share, and leave a review. Our goal is to provide quality episodes to help support the community.